In this series, we connect the fans of today to their team's inception. Player by player, we build the through line that creates the narrative we tell ourselves in an endless cycle of rebuilds and playoff pushes. Our team's successes mark the passage of our lives. Today's team is young enough where most of us remember a time before their existence, and their inception was a marker in our lives. That time was marching forward. Today's team is one of the newest in the MLB, the Arizona Diamondbacks. The history of the Arizona Diamondbacks can essentially be broken up into three phases: Genesis, Exodus, and the Wandering in the Desert phases. Let's start with how a team can build a championship from expansion draft to World Series winners so quickly. And in that quest, we ask ourselves, did they make a deal with the baseball gods that cursed them to forever wander in their desert looking for the pitcher to return them to the promised land? The birth of the Diamondbacks were forged in the furnace of the 1994-95 players' strike. On March 10th of 1995, in a conference room at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C., the sides are ordered to give their best offers by the mediator, but the owners could only agree on one thing that day. By a vote of 28-0, the major leagues would expand in 1998. The strike would end early the next month, and the newly minted owners group would begin the process of building the Diamondbacks from nothing to World Series winners faster than any team in history. The first target for the owners were not players, but the recently fired Yankees manager Buck Showalter. He would miss out on the Yankees dynasty by only 1 year, but construct his own team only to miss out again on their glory by 1 year. But this isn't a history lesson on the D-backs. It's a continuum of players from first to today. So let's get started with their first. The Diamondbacks organization would begin play with minor leaguers in 1997, but their major league team wouldn't hit the field until March 31st, 1998, at home against the 5-year-old Rockies. Leading off in the bottom of the first, for the first ever D-backs at bat was Devon White, who would be their lone all-star for that season, in Colorado. Devon White, like 56% of the 46 players that would see time for the Diamondbacks in 1998, wouldn't wear a Diamondbacks uniform in 1999. To find the first stop on our trip, we will get to choose from 3 players: Brian Anderson, Matt Williams, and David DeLucci. I would so like it to be Brian Anderson, as he was the first pick for the Diamondbacks in the 1997 expansion draft. He was drafted 3rd overall in 1993 by the Angels before being traded to the Indians in 1996, and eventually ending up as the first Diamondback. But alas, some things are not meant to be, and Brian would part ways with the D-backs after the 2002 season, 1 year shy after the year we need him to leave, and leaving us with our 2 next options. Matt Williams was a longtime Giant and another 3rd overall pick. He would be traded from the Giants in the deal that brought Jeff Kent to San Francisco, and then would join the Diamondbacks not from the draft, but from one of their first ever trades. The Indians would get 2 players who the Diamondbacks had picked up in a flurry of trades in the offseason before their 1998 debut. Matt Williams was exactly the type of player the D-backs were looking for in their early years. An impact player who could give the new team an immediate boost, and that would pay off as he would have an all-star year in 1999, finishing 3rd in MVP votes. He was instrumental in their improbable 100-win year in only their 2nd season and their eventual championship season in 2001. Our other leading contender is the lesser-known David DeLucci. Picked by the Diamondbacks in the 45th round of the expansion draft, he was a part-time player throughout his tenure. He would survive the first-year massacre to stay with the team until June of 2003. To be a Diamondback in 1998 was to be on the chopping block. They would go from a 97-loss team in 1998 to a 100-win team in 1999. How does that happen? A lot of moves. As I said, 56% of their first-year players wouldn't make it to opening day of 1999, and a full 89% wouldn't be on the team to join the 2001 World Series celebration. So if you've never heard of David DeLucci, just know that he was good enough. So both Williams and DeLucci would get bounced by the Mets in the 99 playoffs and win it all against the Yankees in 2001, only to see their team blow it up and rebuild as the 2003 squad would underperform and finish 3rd in the NL West. With an aging team and a World Series title, the Diamondbacks would attempt to build their next championship from the ground up. By opening day of 2005, their superstars were gone, as a 111-loss 2004 season would mark their first losing season since their first year in 1998. Now, if you're not a Diamondbacks fan, there's one image that is quintessentially associated with the team. It would be nice to have the most recognizable member of the 2001 team on this list, but Luis Gonzalez didn't join the team until 1999, and left after the 2006 season. So on this list, we will not see Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling, or even Paul Goldschmidt. Maybe this team reflects the city itself. Transplants who are looking for a new home away from the hustle and bustle of the coasts. It is, however, Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling that brought that championship to Arizona. Their co-MVPs in the 2001 World Series provided the end goal for the team's quick rise, but would also send the Diamondbacks on a never-ending quest to replace them, in their hopes of returning to relevancy in the coming years. The most recognizable Diamondbacks pitcher on that quest is our next stop, While all was not lost for the Diamondbacks as the stars of 2001 were dimming, a new star was being born in the desert. Overshadowed by the flashy first half debut of Marlins rookie sensation Dontrelle Willis, 2003 NL Rookie of the Year honors should have gone to the Diamondbacks' Brandon Webb. You wouldn't know it then, but the emergence of Webb would bring us into the second phase of the Diamondbacks, the Exodus. The 2003 season would be the beginning of the end for the team that won the World Series. The next 3 seasons would see the departure of Schilling, Johnson, and Gonzalez. On June 22nd, under the Dome in Montreal, the Expos lead the Diamondbacks 4-0 in the bottom of the 8th, when Webb would make his major league debut. Tossing a scoreless inning with DeLucci in right field, it would have little impact on the game, but he would make his presence known to a wider audience 5 days later on the mound at Shea Stadium for his first big league start versus future Hall of Famer Tom Glavine. In the opener of a doubleheader, Webb would best the Mets, tossing 7 shutout innings while striking out 10 for his first big league win. As Willis would dazzle with his funky delivery, Webb would quietly go about his business and end up outperforming Willis in ERA, WHIP, WAR, strikeouts, and innings pitched, while winning 10 games for the team whose offense was in the bottom third of baseball. Webb would finally be put on the grand stage 3 years later, when his devastating sinker could be denied no longer, and he would win the NL Cy Young Award after a 7-WAR season and finish second in voting for the next 2 years. Alas, the brightest stars burn the hottest and fade the quickest. A mysterious shoulder injury would end Webb's career after only 1 more game. On opening day of 2009, Webb would take the mound for the last time. After 4 innings of work, Webb would be pulled after allowing 6 runs, and he would never see the major leagues again. With Johnson, Schilling, and Webb now gone, the Diamondbacks were well into their final and current phase, wandering the desert. They're still looking for their new pitching messiah to bring them back to the promised land. If the Diamondbacks knew then what they know now, they may not have traded away future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer in the offseason. Let's take a look at what the Diamondbacks got in return. Scherzer was traded after the 2009 season in a 3-team deal that brought Edwin Jackson and Ian Kennedy to the desert. Edwin Jackson would be shipped to the White Sox 7 months later for David Holmberg and Daniel Hudson. Ian Kennedy was traded to the Padres in 2013 for Matt Stairs and Joe Thatcher. David Holmberg would be moved to the Reds after the 2013 season for Justin Choate and Todd Glazerman. Daniel Hudson would be granted free agency after the 2016 season. Matt Stiles would be released by the team during the 2017 season, and Joe Thatcher would find himself on the Angels in a deal for Zach Borenstein and Joey Kimbrell. Finally, Justin Choate, Todd Glassman, and Zach Borenstein never played a day in the majors, while Joey Kedbell was granted free agency after the 2019 season, so the promise of Scherzer would end up in no sustainable long-term gains for the Diamondbacks. Back to the matter at hand. During the peak of Brendan's career, in 2006, a Venezuelan-born catcher would make his debut. He had signed with the Diamondbacks at 17 in 2001 and would make his MLB debut on September 6th of that year. He would go 0-3 that night, but the team would end up going 0-27, as the Marlins' Anibal Sanchez would no-hit the D-backs, and for the second time, a Marlins rookie would outshine a future star of the Diamondbacks. Montero would be backup catcher for the entirety of the rest of Webb's career, only taking on primary duties after the departure of longtime starter Chris Snyder. Once taking over full-time catching duties for the 2011 season, Miguel would earn 2 All-Star nods in the next 4 years before being traded to the Cubs for prospects as they attempted to rebuild after a disastrous 2014 campaign, garnering 5th place in the NL West, with a Major League worst 64 wins. Much is spoken about the 2016 Cubs World Series that ended the 108-year drought, the impassioned speech by Jason Hayward during the Game 7 rain delay, Rajai Davis's game-tying 2-run home run off Chapman, or the bullpen implosion on both sides through overuse of their hard-throwing lefties. But what is little spoken about is Miguel Montero's contribution. Again relegated to a role of backup catcher, Montero would carve his name into local legend status. In the top of the 10th inning, the Cubs already led. Ben Zobrist, who had just won a title the preceding year in Kansas City, doubles in the go-ahead run with 1 out. After an intentional walk to Addison Russell, the bases are loaded for Montero. On a 1-1 count, Montero slashes a 94-mile-an-hour fastball to left field to plate an insurance run. After a Davis single in the bottom of the frame, that insurance run would prove the difference maker for the breaking of the curse. Montero may not have been the difference maker for Arizona through his best years, but we can consider this a returning of the favor from Mark Grace. On June 29th of that season, rookie shortstop Nick Ahmed would take the field for the first time with Montero behind the plate. Ahmed would play in 25 games that first season, but would take over full-time duties after Didi Gregorius was traded to the Yankees to replace the retired Derek Jeter. In return, the Diamondbacks would receive future Cy Young winner Robbie Ray from Detroit as their part in the 3-team deal. Once again, the Diamondbacks would let a future ace slip through their fingers. Ahmed joined the D-backs in the 2013 offseason. The Diamondbacks and Braves would come together for a massive 6-player deal. This deal included Diamondbacks star Justin Upton, who was coming up on free agency. He would be dealt a year later to the Padres for their current ace, Max Fried. Upton was the #1 overall pick in the 2005 draft. This young superstar would spend his 20s as an all-star and one of the most productive hitters in the game, before landing in Anaheim where careers go to die, and see his production drop off, eventually being released from the team in April of 2022. So many near misses for the Diamondbacks to retain an ace to replace what they had lost in Webb. Nick Ahmed, however, is now a Diamondback and mans the shortstop position through to today. So many false prophets leading to heartache and what could have beens. Not to go off on a tangent, but let's take a look at what could have been the D-backs rotation for the 2022 season if knowledge and money were unlimited. Scherzer spent the 2022 season with the Mets, going 11-5 with a 2.20 ERA over 23 starts. With a whip below 1 and an ERA plus at 169, he would have been a nice but very expensive piece to this fantasy. Next up, Max Fried. Though never a Diamondback, he could have been for the price the D-backs paid for Nick Ahmed just 1 year later, as Justin Upton was a key part in both deals. Anyway, Fried, pitching for Atlanta, would go on to have a 14-7 season with a 2.48 ERA and an All-Star appearance, and finishing second in the league in Cy Young voting. His 164 ERA plus would have paired nicely with Scherzer's. And finally, we have Robbie Ray. Yes, the D-backs didn't exactly give up on Ray as he pitched over 5 seasons for them. Again, this is a fantasy where money and foresight are not limited, but the D-backs traded him while he was struggling at the 2020 deadline for essentially nothing, and instead would spend that money on an aging Madison Bumgarner. Ray would go on to win the 2021 Cy Young Award in the AL and post a 12-12 record for Seattle in 2022. His 3.71 ERA would have been a great number 3 to the rotation. Of course, we're talking about spending $71 million on 3 players, but what a rotation it would be. Back to our story. Nick Ahmed has been a below-average hitter throughout his career, but has slick hands, winning back-to-back Gold Gloves for the D-backs in a defense-first position. Today, the Diamondbacks are mired in their longest rebuild, stuck in a division with some of the biggest spenders in the National League. Having been relegated to the bottom of the division for the last 3 seasons, it is often forgotten how productive this team once was. Of the 4 teams to join the majors since 1993, the D-backs have more division wins than the other 3 combined and a World Series victory to boot. Like their home city's namesake, the Diamondbacks always seem to rise from the ashes to reclaim their place among baseball's best. We hope for their fans' sake that they don't keep wandering the desert for 40 years and can find their way back to glory. So that's it. Williams, Webb, Montero, and Ahmed. From day 1 to today, 4 degrees from team creation.